Ostenil we've used considerably, I think, but I think it's still quite underused in a lot of our areas. We often use it for players that are just coming into a point of their career where they're starting to get some degenerative change, either in the ankle or more often in the knee. And I've never seen a bad reaction to it. I've only ever seen positive reactions to an Ostenil injection. The procedure we would go through really is we'd discuss the player's symptoms, and then we would decide if this is the way forward. If Ostenil was an option, which regularly it can be for these kind of players, then we would discuss it with the player. And the first thing the player will say is it steroid? I don't want steroids. And the good thing is we can say, no, it's a natural product that your body produces anyway. We're just supplementing it, and it's absolutely of no problem whatsoever. And I always say to them, I think what my answer to every player is, if it was my knee, I'd be having it. So, I think if you can say that to a player, hand on heart, if it was my knee, this is what I would do, then that sets the player's mind at rest. First and foremost, you're trying to make sure that the player plays for the club, but also looks after himself as a human being. You don't want players coming in and being utilised as a commodity and then sent off to just look after themselves. You want the player to flourish at the club and perform his best for the club, but also have a future outside of the club. And our input in terms of that will certainly help them achieve that kind of aim. We had a player who had a chondral issue, and the chondral issue was dealt with surgically. And again, you may argue that possibly that could have been staved off if we'd used Ostenil earlier. Who knows? You just don't know that. But he started to take them as a consequence of post-surgical stiffness and irritation. And once he realised that the effect it had on him made him feel almost like the knee had not had surgery, he, every time he got to the point, every 4 or 5 months, he felt the knee was starting to drop off again and starting to feel some irritation, a little bit of effusion in the knee. He'd have a top-up. Prolonged his career without a doubt. He had serious knee problems. Ankle-wise, you can use it in the ankle, and again, for the same reason, somebody has degenerative change in the ankles, and that happens a lot in football because of the pivoting, rotational nature of the game, and the joint surfaces getting roughened up. And an Ostenil injection into that ankle again will make it feel a lot more comfortable, will settle it down and allow the player to get back on the pitch and maybe prolong his career. And I've seen that a number of times. We use it more often in the knee, but the ankle, certainly we've used it on quite a few occasions at this club and my previous clubs. Often trauma can then lead to degenerative change. We know ACL injuries, for instance, that can have an accelerating effect on early onset arthritis. So in the athletic population, that's massive. You pick up an ACL injury early in your career, and we know if you're trying to get another 15 years out of your career, that the likelihood is in that time you're going to start picking up more degenerative change because the mechanics of the knee have changed. So Ostenil can really help get over that and prolong that career and allow the players to play with more comfort, less irritation, more training time, and generally, have a more successful and long career as a player without too many aspects of their career and their training being affected by this degenerative change. A lot of the time, I think HA could be there for the prevention of these onset issues. So we could use it when we start to feel that a player has a developing problem. We can use HA to reduce the acceleration of these issues, chondral defect issues, this kind of stuff. From a surgical perspective, it would depend on the surgery, it would depend on the state of the knee. If you have an ACL without any complications, if the ACL comes back, he's very clean, his knee's clean, he has no degenerative change, and it's just an isolated ACL, they would just let nature do what it does. Now there would be an interesting study to see whether these degenerative changes didn't occur with the intervention of annual Ostenil injections, for instance. So these are all things that we need to learn a little bit more about. But all I can say is, from the players that we've used it on, I just think it sometimes is the only answer. The early stages of degeneration are generally just a discomfort around the knee. Sometimes they describe it as like a burning pain. They feel sometimes like it's bone on bone. Some players will actually describe it, I feel like I've got bone on bone. They start to have moderate effusion, which is like a bit of swelling in the knee. But generally they just feel like discomfort, and they've had no history. They've had no twisting history. You You've got certain tests you can do on the knee to try and elicit the same pain, and this pain will tell you whether the pain is coming from the joint surface or not, or from the ligaments or the soft tissue. So we can test them for that thing, but it's generally, they're coming in and they're just not comfortable on the pitch. They have a limitation to either flexion or extension, and as they start to do this, it develops it's quite obvious to pick them out, because there's no reason for their knee pain. They've not had a kick, they've not twisted and turned and caused any problem. You can rule out a meniscal injury quite easily, and so you're left really with the bony surface. And if that bony surface is roughened up and starting to degenerate, then's the time you can start using the Ostenil to try and improve performance, improve availability. Any players that I've taken the Ostenil injections, they always come back in and say the knee feels great. It's so much different to how it was pre. What HA will allow is, if their knee's more comfortable, you can go back to the basic strengthening programs that they're on, because the loading issues in the knee, we're trying to load them on the pitch. We want to load them in the gym as well to get them stronger, because the stronger they are around the knee, then the less the joint is going to take the forces. So giving them HA to allow them to be more comfortable will allow them to get back in the gym more, do more work, which will again have a secondary effect in terms of reducing the degenerative change in the knee. I wouldn't say any player at that point would get back to being 100% brand new, but they're a lot more comfortable, and sometimes they'll come in and say, my knee does feel perfect. But that depends on the state, and if you pick them up earlier and start introducing it earlier, maybe we get to the point where we can keep this degenerative change at bay. It's a 2-minute job. A good surgeon knows exactly where to inject it into the knee itself. They sterilise the area, inject it, and then the only thing you get is the knee's a little bit full for maybe 24, 48 hours, where it feels because they've injected fluid into the knee, and then over that next 24 hours, maybe 48 for the prolonged ones, they probably can't train. Certainly, in my experience, usually only 24 hours that we keep them off it, and then after that they're back into the normal training routine. So it's definitely a very short, very pain-free, minimally invasive procedure. The alternatives, you can see that every day when you talk to old coaches and stuff, the cortisone injections that were taken, the famous cases like Tommy Smith from Liverpool, who was crippled by these cortisone injections that they apparently had. And there's well-documented cases out there, about the players and the effect of all these things. And at the time, that was our best knowledge. Our best practice now isn't driven by that. And I do feel that, we know that the HA is a naturally producing product. It's just a supplementation. It's like taking a supplement, and we just had a player in here now taking a supplement. He feels helps him with his power and everything else. And with the HA supplementation, it for me just seems crazy that we don't offer this more often in every aspect of our population. We take it all the way back 25, 30 years. You had any kind of issue with the knee, you're pretty much facing, the end of your career. And now you look at the players are coming back with ACL problems and coming back in 6-8 months, and they're back on the pitch and finishing their career. Whereas before, you had an ACL, you're pretty much finished in the game. And the same with meniscal injuries, and anything where the change in the knee or the joint is such an issue that they just simply cannot function anymore. Of course, for us, it's about keeping the squad available, keeping it playable, not just available, able to perform on the pitch. It's okay having a squad, but if they can't perform because they've got a stiff knee or a stiff ankle, it's no point in having them in the squad in the first place. So it's not just about availability, it's about performance as well. I can't ever remember anybody having an Ostenil injection and saying it never made any difference. It usually makes a difference, and it often makes a very significant difference. It's interesting talking to the old coaches that have them. They've been through all this. They've been through these degenerative changes, and they come looking for it. We're not suggesting to them come and get an Ostenil injection. They come looking for it.
Real players, real lives, real football.